Okay, thank you all so much. Again, welcome, Alachua County Democrats. It's so good to have all of you under one roof this evening. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Evelyn Foxx, and I am the Chiles Gala Chair. And we will begin at this time. We're going to ask Commissioner Cynthia Moore Chestnut to come with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, let us stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. At this time, most of you will meet a person you've never met before. We have a brand new chair of the Alachua County Democratic Committee of Alachua County, Mr. Paul Wolfe. Come on, Paul.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. Welcome to both those who have been with us before and those who are new to our gala. We hope you enjoy the evening of empowering and vibrant speakers, music, and cuisine. Today, we celebrate 24 years of our Lawton Chiles Gala, an event which has spanned many different leaders, seen many different faces, and honored many servants of our community. We are proud to be here today, serving as a bastion of our democracy-oriented ideals. Before we get started, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to those who helped bring this event together, namely the Lawton Chiles Gala Committee with Chair Evelyn Foxx, and members Devonda Brown, Doris Harvey, Marty McGuire, and Grace Walker. We are also grateful to the many members of our Silent Auction Committee whose hard work is on display in the lobby and is available for your browsing. We are also grateful to the Hilton Conference Center for hosting this event. In today's gathering, we have to reaffirm our support for democracy. It is a moral and structural imperative that we wake up every day and spread the word of democracy and our ideals, not only here in our community, but to our neighbors. We have the distinction of being only one of 4 counties to go blue in Florida in 2022. This is due to the hard work of our local advocates and leaders. We must retain this status in 2024 and help others achieve the same goal, electing Democrats to represent them. That will be our mantra into the next presidential election year, and everything we do must be to that end. We have some wonderful speakers and music this evening and a great dinner to enjoy. In closing, allow me to give you a warm welcome to the 24th Annual Lawton Chiles Gala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess you know we have new young leaders. Paul is quite young, still in his 20s, but he feels that he could move the party forward. So we have to give him that opportunity. So thanks to all of you for coming. At this time, Doris Harvey, who works very hard with the Chiles Gala as well as the DWC of Alachua County, is coming.
Thank you. Good evening.
I just want to say a big thank you for the Lawton Chiles Gala Committee. Many of us, a core group of us, have worked now since 2021 on this committee. We work for months at a time, take a couple of months break, and then start right back in working on the next event. We are led by this wonderful woman here, Evelyn Foxx, who is a woman of great faith and also great determination. And she has been a wonderful leader for 3 years now. And as I call the other people's name, would you please stand up? Devonda Brown is not in here at the moment. She has been working on the auction, but she is also part of the Chiles Gala. Melvin Flournoy is not here tonight. Doris Harvey. Marty McGuire. John Reskin. Grace Walker. Paul Wolfe. And Dorothy Blair, who helped us quite a bit this time. Dorothy, would you please stand up? Thank you. I also want to recognize the hardworking people of the Lawton Chiles Silent Auction Committee. We gather various things and work on putting prices on them, and this year we'd had some outstanding items donated. Marty McGuire, co-chair, please stand up. Devonda Brown. Phyllis Ernie. Dottie Fabasi. Mary Furman. Sarah Harrison. Maggie McDonald. Barbara Oberlander. Susan Weinstein. And Mary White. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Doris. She's always worried about something, and she keeps us straight. Thanks again. Before our mayor comes with our moment of inspiration, I would like to acknowledge the past chairs of the Alachua County Democratic Party. We have Jay Maggio, please stand. We have Dr. Cynthia Moore Chestnut, please stand. And we have Helen Strain, please stand. These people have kept us going through the years. Oh my God, John! How can I forget John? I served as his vice chair for about 15 years. Thank you, John. He's still working with us. And there are some other people who have helped us to keep the Chiles Gala going, and that is Pat Byrne and Ron. They have worked with us for over 25 years. Pat and Ron, please stand. Okay, thank you. At this time, our mayor is coming for a moment of inspiration. Right after him, dinner will be served. Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, Alachua County Democrats. That's close, but that's not going to get it done in this coming year. Good evening, Alachua County Democrats. All right, that's what I'm talking about. So when Evelyn asked me to do a moment of inspiration, she was not talking about the cheering part, but I feel like we got to let the Spirit move us a little bit in our moment of inspiration. Am I right? Yeah? Because if we walk out of here uninspired and we walk out of here without a plan for how we are going to win up and down the ballot next year, then we have failed, right? We're not going to fail next year. All that said, what Evelyn asked me to do was something very much like a prayer, but we're going to be careful not to actually pray because we have many, many different faiths and not faiths represented here this evening. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to just take a moment of silence. But I want to talk very specifically when we talk about inspiration about faith. Not necessarily the kind of faith that we experience on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning or whenever we might have occasion for that. But faith in a system that has been given us for more than 200 years and developed to be better and better and better as we go. I want us to as we go into a moment of silence, to have faith in that system, but more importantly, to be thinking about faith in each other, in everybody at your table, and everybody at every other table, because that is how we get this done and how we keep our system afloat. Because let me tell you, there are people who want to wreck this system. There are people who don't want this system to be the way that we have inherited it, and I will not stand for that. And I hope that you will not as well. So give some thought as we go into a moment of silence to faith in our system and faith in each other. So if you would just take just a moment here and be silent and go inside for a moment. All right, thank you all. I hope you enjoyed dinner, and I hope you walk out of here completely inspired. And let the people say, amen.
Dinner is served, and we will be entertained by the Weeds of Eden. Come on now. Let's give them a big hand. They are just wonderful. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as they continue to serve us, so thank you, but we're going to proceed because we don't want to keep people out too late. At this time, we are going to bring up the only Democrat that we have representing us in Tallahassee, and that is State Representative Yvonne Hinson. Let's give her another hand of applause.
Hello, Democrats. Well, the chicken is good. It's very good. It's very good, Madam Chairman of this gala. Thank you. Yeah. So I am Yvonne Hinson. I'm your state representative for District 21. I bring you greetings from the state of Florida, and I'm going to leave it at that. Everywhere that I have been to speak or to bring greetings, I have had to expound on academic freedom, critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion. HB 999, I hope you've heard about that one. Affirmative action. Stop woke. The dilution of African American history. Continuous voter suppression. The introduction of Prager University curriculum. The ejection of duly elected officials. The exodus of good teachers and college professors leaving the state of Florida. And let me just say, I had to speak yesterday for a group about what's going on at the University of Florida, so I have a little data. We have lost over 20% of our great professors at the University of Florida. They're leaving the state. FSU has lost 28% of theirs, and the number is astronomical at FIU in Miami. Let me just say that we cannot afford to raise a generation who can detach themselves emotionally from their privilege when it caused so much oppression on a people. But that's what Stop Woke does. We cannot afford to raise a generation that can detach themselves from the fact that we all have conscious and unconscious biases. But that's what Stop Woke does. We can't afford to raise a generation that doesn't understand systemic racism exists and created the social injustices we see in today's society. But that's what Stop Woke does. We've got to stand in solidarity. Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, unions and non-unions, League of Women Voters and Democratic Women of Florida, the NAACP and the ACLU, Democrats and independents. We've got to stand together if we're gonna conquer this thing. From a quote I got on Facebook by Susan Griffin, no one can stop us from imagining another kind of future, one that departs from the terrible cataclysm of violent conflict, of hateful divisions, poverty, and suffering. Let us begin to imagine the worlds we would like to inhabit, the long lives we will share, the many futures we will have in our hands. And so, now third-party voter registration organizations have immeasurable constraints. Well, don't let that stop you. Use your phones, use your iPads, and the phones of everyday citizens to do voter registration. Vote.org, vote.gov, the Florida Democratic Party has a voting registration tool, and our own supervisor of elections, Vote Alachua, has a voter registration platform. We cannot be deterred. We have got to continue to do the work. Our future and the future of our children depends on it. We can still set up voter registration outreach tables. Just use phones and tablets. Otherwise, you know, you may end up with a $250,000 penalty, courtesy of your governor. These negative distractions is sucking all the energy out of us and sucking all the energy out of the greater good that we can have, the greater world we can have, and our greater goal. Voter registration and massive voter turnout is very important, and nothing and no one can stop us from doing it. Nothing can stop us. Nothing can stop us. Nothing can stop us. We're all the way up. Turn up the volume. and get out the vote. Thank you.
She always gets us fired up. So if you have an opportunity at the next session, I would implore all of you to go up to Tallahassee to support our state representative. I went up a couple of times last year, and I promised myself I was not going back again. I was heartbroken the way the Democrats and how our representative was treated, or ignored, I should say. So you all do whatever you can to support her, because she's doing an excellent job being the one blue spot surrounded by red. At this time, Grace Walker of the Chiles Gala Committee is going to come up and give instructions to you. Grace Walker.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming tonight. This is amazing. I love seeing all these smiling faces. It's very exciting. At this time, I'm going to do the presentation, and I'm asking that the elected officials, constitutional officers, and candidates please make your way to the stage. You'll be coming up on this side and then walking over, saying your name, what office you hold, or what office you're running for, and then make your way to the other side of the stage. Thank you so much. All right, come on up. And I also want to thank all of these folks for all of their hard work and dedication. This is why we are here. We want more Democrats in office. Thank you.
I am Monique Worrell, the duly elected state attorney for the 9th Judicial Circuit of Florida. And I'm also introducing on his behalf, because he won't do it, my colleague, Andrew Warren, the duly elected state attorney for Hillsborough County, Florida.
Good evening, I'm Mary Helen Wheeler, Alachua County Commissioner, District 2. I'm so glad to see all of you here tonight. We got a lot of work to do.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Prizia, and I am Alachua County Commission, District 3. Thank you all.
Good evening. I'm Aisha Solomon, the Alachua County Property Appraiser. Thank you.
Good evening again. My name is Harvey Ward. I'm the mayor of Gainesville, and I'm so happy that you are here in our city to celebrate.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Chestnut, Gainesville City Commissioner, Seat B, and I am running for re-election.
Good evening, I'm Casey Willits, Gainesville City Commission, District 3, where you are at right now in Southwest Gainesville.
Hi, Brian Eastman, Gainesville City Commission, District 4.
Good evening. Good evening. I am Diane McGraw, and I represent District 2 for the Alachua County School Board. Thank you.
Good evening, Democrats. John Power, tax collector. Thank you. I'll have love notes coming to all of you in about 2 weeks. Watch for them.
Good evening, Mary Offord, Alachua County District 1 Commissioner, and I'm also running for re-election. I look forward to having your support. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kim A. Barton, Alachua County Supervisor of Elections. And oh yes, I'm running for re-election.
Hi, my name is Kathy Penny, and I'm the Vice Mayor of the big city of Archer, Florida.
Good evening. I'm Tina Surton, member of Alachua County School Board, District 1 seat, and I am also president of the Florida School Board Association.
Hello, I'm Leonetta McNeely, and I serve on the Alachua County School Board for District 4. I am seeking re-election.
That's a tough act to follow. I'm Ken Cornell, your Alachua County District 4 Commissioner.
Good evening, I'm Sarah Rockwell. I'm School Board District 3.
Good evening, I bring you greetings from Micanopy, Florida. I'm Mayor Gianna Williams.
Good evening, I'm Chad Scott. I'm running for Alachua County Sheriff. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Evans Anthony Pierre-Antoine, and I'm running for State Attorney's Office for the 8th Judicial Circuit.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy Trask, and I'm running for State House District 22.
My name is Dijon Kane. I'm running for Alachua County Commission District 1. Let's go Dems!
Boy, aren't we fortunate in Gainesville to have all of these Democratic elected officials and... But you know what? Come up here. There's one constitutional officer that didn't come up, and she has to. A lot of people haven't met you. The Gainesville City Commission city manager, come up here so people can see you. They haven't met you.
This is totally unnecessary, but good evening, everyone. I am Cynthia Curry, City Manager for the City of Gainesville.
Cynthia, I think what it is, Miss Manager, a lot of people in this room have not met you. So that's why we want all the good Dems to meet all the people that we support. Let's give them all a hand, please. Thank you all so much. You make this party shine because all of you are here and all of you are Democrats. And you do a lot for us. We are going through some little challenges right now with the city, but it's going to be okay. That's what my granddaughter tells me, great-granddaughter tells me all the time. Grammy, it's going to be okay. So I feel we're going to be okay. Everything's going to work out, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Okay, we're going to move right along with our program. And we're going to go on and have Ms. Iris Burke, who is the Vice Chair of the Democratic Party, to come and introduce our first speaker. Iris.
I am Iris Burke, Vice Chair of the Alachua County Democratic Party. Welcome. Thank you for being here and for supporting our work. I am particularly honored to introduce Monique Worrell for several reasons. One is because I worked with her for years at the University of Florida College of Law, and the other and more important reason is that her life work embodies some of our highest values as Democrats: education, justice, rule of law. I met Monique Worrell when we were both educators, clinical law professors at the University of Florida College of Law. Monique taught on the criminal law side, and I taught on the civil law side. For anyone not familiar with the term clinical teaching, it means working with law students who are representing real people in real cases before real judges, and using what those law students see every day in their experiences to shape their understanding of how the system actually operates and their role in it. One central concept in Monique's teaching was always the appropriate role of the prosecutor, the state attorney. The state attorney's ethical obligation is to serve justice, not to serve the governor, not to rack up conviction rates, but to do justice. Every state attorney has prosecutorial discretion to enable them to do that. You're going to hear more about that term, prosecutorial ethics and prosecutorial discretion tonight, but these are critical, central concepts for prosecutors. Monique Worrell has always served justice. As an educator, as a public defender, as a private attorney, as the founding director of the Conviction Integrity Unit in the Orange County State Attorney's Office. And most recently, until August of this year, and you'll hear more about that, as the elected state attorney for the 9th Judicial Circuit for the state of Florida. Monique Worrell is exactly the kind of person who should serve in the role of state attorney. The removal of her from that role by the governor is an attack, one of many, on justice, on the rule of law, and on our most fundamental democratic institutions. It's an attack on all of us. And with that, let's welcome Monique Worrell, and let's do everything we can to support her, to support Andrew Warren, and while we're at it, to ensure that we have a Democratic state attorney in the 8th Judicial Circuit. Thank you.
Good evening, Alachua County Democrats. Thank you so much, Iris. You know, when I read the run of show, when I saw that Iris was going to be introducing me, I was so pleasantly surprised. And I was like, well, there can't be another Iris Burke in Gainesville. It's got to be the one that I know and loved and worked with for so many years at UF. So I was a professor at University of Florida, as Iris mentioned, but I'm also a Gator graduate, so go Gators. We are in an unprecedented time in the history of this country. And it is not hyperbole when I say we should all be very alarmed. Our democracy is being taken from under our feet, inch by inch, moment by moment. And if we as Democrats do not get active, then we risk our country becoming a dictatorship. What we have seen has been one of the most flagrant attacks on our democracy in the history of this country. And it's not even subtle anymore. I am honored to sit shoulder to shoulder with my colleague, Andrew Warren, and at the same time disturbed that in this August, almost exactly a year after the August that he was suspended, we joined the club of elected officials who were unconstitutionally removed from office by a weak, authoritarian governor in an effort for his selfish gain to boost his poll numbers in his failing presidential campaign. But I want us to not become too comfortable in the thought of a failing presidential campaign, because we were once before dismissive of someone who we did not think had what it took to become president of this country. And while we were sleeping, they were working. And while we were being dismissive, they were working. And here today in 2023, we are suffering the consequences of our absence in 2016. As Democrats, we feel deeply, we have ideology, and we feel strongly about how we feel about different positions. We are loyalists, and we become surrounding of our candidates in the primaries, and to our own detriment if our candidate doesn't make it out of the primary. We can't get over our feelings, and we lose collectively in the general elections. We can't afford to do that again, because I said we are suffering the consequences of our absence, not only in 2016, but here in Florida in 2018, and again in 2022. We can't afford to get in our feelings and stay there, because we are losing the rights that have been fought and won at a rate much faster than those rights were given to us. We are losing the rights as women to choose what happens to our bodies. We are losing the rights as parents to choose what our children learn in school, or what books they read, or what shows they attend. We are constantly taunted with the thought of Florida being free, as our rights are continuously and aggressively being stripped away. Is this the America that our forefathers envisioned? Is this the home of the free? So what are we going to do about it? Fight, because in 2020, I stood on the steps of City Hall in Orlando and I asked the voters what they were gonna do about it. And the answer was vote. And they did. They came out and they voted. And we won in 2020. And apparently we got some sort of amnesia, because when 2022 rolled around, we forgot about all of the things that we stood for, and we stayed home in record numbers. All the while, the governor was inviting the most radical people to come and live in this state. For the first time in years, the number of registered Democrats fell behind the number of registered Republican voters. We lost voters to the independents, and we failed to inspire the independents to come out and vote. and we are suffering the consequences of our absence and our lack of efforts. So 2024 is coming, and we have a lot of very important elections coming. But as I said earlier, a lot of us have become dismissive, and we've said, well, the governor can't possibly win because he's not the forerunner. So let me talk to you a little bit about criminal law and how it works. Mm-hmm. How many indictments are we up to now? Yeah, right, a lot, 91, I think someone said, right. So while the cynical person in me wants to say there's no way that Trump will ever serve a day in jail, the realist in me understands that this is bigger than just Trump, right? And that there are Republicans who are very strong who don't want Trump back in office. And that they can do things behind the scenes to ensure his demise. So if we sit back and think that Trump is gonna be the forerunner and he's gonna escape the 91 indictments that he have, I wanna say that that's irresponsible thinking, and that we could very well end up with a president of these United States who doesn't just threaten to overturn an election, but actually does it because he has shown us that he has no respect for the Constitution and he does not care about the will of the voters. In 2020, I decided to run for state attorney. Not because I wanted to be a politician, please hear me when I tell you I did not. I was actually quite happy being a clinical law professor at the University of Florida. And when the time came for me to end that season there and move on, I went to the state attorney's office to work under my predecessor, Aramis Ayala, as the director of her conviction integrity unit. And I want you to look at the progression of evil, okay? Because it was Governor Rick Scott who decided that he would come in and remove and make the very first attack on prosecutorial discretion. And then that evolved when DeSantis took office, right? So when Aramis decided that she wasn't going to run again, and I kept kind of pestering her about it, in a moment of frustration, she said, if you care about this so much, you run. And I was like, don't be ridiculous. I can't be the state attorney. I'm a career defense attorney. I don't even have the pedigree for what it takes to be the state attorney. And I went home that evening and I tossed and turned with it, and the words wouldn't leave me alone. So I decided that I would run away. I left and took a job in New York, and I was chief legal officer of a nonprofit organization that was focused on probation reform. And it was great. The money was good, New York was wonderful. And I hate to take responsibility publicly for COVID. But I may or may not have had to flee back to Florida once COVID hit, because if you remember, New York was a place that was hit the hardest by COVID. So once back in Florida, again, I began wrestling with this whole concept of running for state attorney. And one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I decided that I would run. I didn't come from money. I didn't know a lot of people with money. I didn't have name recognition. And for those of you who are familiar with my race, I was running against some very popular people. But it was okay, because I knew that my experience as a defense attorney, as a law professor, as a chief legal officer, taught me that Here in the country, the home of the free, we incarcerate more people than anywhere in the world. And here in the state of Florida, we do it at a rate higher than the national average. So much so that of the 3,000 exonerated people in this country, 39 of them were exonerated off of death row in the state of Florida. That the disproportionate minority representation in the criminal legal system was far too high for it to be coincidental. And that someone needed to start talking about these things instead of talking about law and order alone and this contest for how many people we can put in prison. So I joined the race. And a few months later, George Floyd was murdered. And Breonna Taylor was murdered, and Ahmaud Arbery was murdered. And the race changed because people no longer wanted to hear about law and order. They wanted to know who was going to stop the murders of innocent and unarmed African Americans in the streets, and not just people who looked like me, but people who looked like all of you too. As a country, we were watching and we said, enough is enough. And I was able to speak to those issues because they were issues that I had championed throughout my entire career. And I was able to speak to those issues in a way that my opponents could not. And it was then that my race changed, and more than 66% of individuals in Orange County and Osceola counties voted for me to become their state attorney. Shortly after my election and before I even took office, the guy who came in fourth in my race asked to meet with me. He wanted to become my chief assistant. And in that meeting, he said to me, "You need to know that the governor is out to get you and he is going to have you removed." I said I hadn't taken office yet. So I was very careful. I dotted every I, I crossed every T. And when Andrew was removed in August of 2022, I knew that it wouldn't be long before I would be next. And certainly it wasn't, because in February of 2023, when a madman went on a shooting rampage in the Pine Hills community of Orlando, the governor found an opening. That was his opportunity to pounce and make the shooting of a 19-year-old who had only one adult offense of possession of under 20 grams of marijuana would change the lives of the individuals in Orlando forever. And the governor and Senator Scott and our locally elected Democratic sheriff would find a way to make it my fault. And from there, the disinformation campaign continued. Anytime that any crime was committed, they made it my fault. And the reason they did this was so that when the governor came and took over my office on August 9th of 2023 with snipers on the roof of the courthouse buildings and sent armed law enforcement officers to the house of my chief of staff who was on maternity leave and walked my executive team out of the building with law enforcement officers, that the community would accept it because every crime that had taken place in Orange and Osceola County was, after all, my fault. Our democracy is under attack. The governor has once again exceeded his authority by removing a duly elected official. And we knew that this was going to happen because in last year's legislative session, the governor requested to triple his litigation budget because he knew that hefty legal fees would need to be paid for the constitutional violations that he would rack up over this next term. So Democrats, I'm asking you tonight, what are we going to do to take back our democracy? Because I'll tell you this, no one is coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. Yes, I am suspended without pay. No, I cannot practice law, which is the way that I have earned my living for the last 23 years. But this is not about me. It's not about Andrew. It's not about any of the rest of us who have been suspended from our positions. This is about the disenfranchisement of votes from Democratic districts. This is an attack on all of you. We are nice, and we are kind, and we are loving, and we are feeling, and they are ruthless, and they are aggressive, and they are strategic, and we are losing. We cannot continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. That is the definition of insanity. We have to get together. We have to become united upon the things that we agree upon and stop being divided upon those things that we disagree upon, because we have far more in common than we don't. So I encourage you all this evening as you walk away to not just come in this room and clap and be inspired by the words that I have given you, but instead be inspired by your circumstances, as many of the civil rights leaders of the past were inspired by their own circumstances, as Harriet Tubman was inspired by her circumstances of slavery, as Rosa Parks was inspired by the circumstances of the inequity of her positioning on the bus, as Ruby Bridges was inspired by the inequality in education. Today, in 2023 and in 2024, we must be inspired by the attack on our democracy, and we cannot take it sitting down. We must stand up and fight.
Say in the Baptist church, what a word, what a word. Thank you. Will the sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha please come forward for just a moment, please? I think we have a few of you here. They have a presentation for their sister, and this is customary in the sororities. Come on, Monique. Doesn't she have a story to tell? Wouldn't her story inspire all of us? And Andrew's story is going to be the same. It's something to make us be inspired. Come on.
Good evening again. Of course, we are inspired, and as part of and on behalf of the Mu Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, we are so excited that you're here and you've joined this evening. We just wanted to show you a little love because we know how it feels or what you're going through, but we wanted to know we're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha, for being here. Thank you. I tell you, if you weren't touched by Monique's story, then you have to hear from Andrew, which may make you cry. So at this time, Rod Smith, our former chair of the Florida Democratic Party, is coming up, and he's going to introduce Andrew. Thank you, Rod.
Y'all try following that. I want to thank the Alachua County DEC for inviting me tonight and giving me the honor of introducing to those of you who don't know him, my friend Andrew Warren. I will admit that I have sufficiently moved to that point in my dotage that I normally look forward to another political dinner about like a proctologist appointment, but when I found out that it was an opportunity to introduce, when I got a call from Susan Botcher, I immediately volunteered to do that, which my wife said, "You did what?" I said, "I'm going to the dinner and I want to introduce a very special young man to you." About 10 years ago, a young United States attorney visited my law office and he expressed his desire to go into elective public office. It was just within a few minutes that I realized that Andrew Warren's passion, his talent, and his potential were apparent. But I have to tell you, at the time, I didn't think he was old enough to have a driver's license. Having just been released from my short incarceration as chairman of the Florida Democratic Party, I gave Andrew several suggestions as to positions that I thought he would be an excellent candidate for. I started by suggesting to him that there are certain contacts you need to make and there are certain people you need to know, and I began to introduce him to some of those people. I started by suggesting also some offices. I thought he was ready for a state Senate race or a state House race then, but he just dutifully went on, and I didn't hear from him for a while. He met with all the gurus around the state, and we stayed in touch. At the end of 2015, Andrew visited me again, and he surprised me by announcing that he had decided that he was going to run for the state attorney's office in Hillsborough County, and he would be running against an incumbent Republican. Now, folks, that's something I have some experience with. I didn't tell him, but frankly, I didn't think he had a ghost of a chance. But I was wrong. Andrew was right. He ran and defeated a 4-term Republican incumbent. And 4 years later, he was reelected overwhelmingly. That, folks, confirmed my belief that Andrew Warren was a special young Democrat with a great future ahead of him. From day one, I knew that the Warren family had raised the boy right here in Gainesville. Later, I learned that Andrew had graduated with a degree in economics from Brandeis University and had received his law degree from Columbia, and I can tell you if I was twice as smart, I wouldn't have half a chance to get in either one of those places. Over the years, I learned that he was married to the wonderful Alex and that they had 2 daughters, Elliot and Lucy, who Andrew will undoubtedly brag about having coached to softball Little League championships. I thought then, and I told Democrats and began to tell Democrats all over the state, that the much needed renaissance of the Florida Democratic Party would undoubtedly include fresh-faced politicians like Andrew. Unfortunately, the Republicans must have seen the same thing. That, my friends, explains why a bright, aggressive, progressive, with a proven record of fighting against violent crime and corporate crime, was without any warning marched out of like a common criminal from his office on the direction of Governor DeSantis, who promptly replaced him with a less experienced Republican. All this despite the fact that Andrew was steadily assembling one of the state's most effective prosecutor's office. Think about it. A young man with an Ivy League education who had chosen to become a federal and then a state prosecutor, and that's an enormous sacrifice, I can tell you. He was removed by a governor who's never prosecuted a case in his life in the state of Florida. Why? What was the crime? What was the act of misdemeanor or negligence? What was it that led to his removal? Well, according to a federal judge who heard the case, Andrew Warren had done nothing that would warrant his removal. Nevertheless, according to our governor, who is, by the way, currently belly flopping in the national polls, Andrew's problem was that he was woke, whatever in the hell that actually means. Well, I'd like to ask our governor, was Andrew woke because, like every effective prosecutor I've ever known, he could tell the critical difference between a bad guy and a bad decision and a bad situation? Was Andrew woke because he considered it just as important to turn people's lives around as it was to discard them into a prison system? Was it woke to recognize that making a safer community requires much more than just the tallying up of conviction rates? Was Andrew woke to recognize, as did the great Janet Reno when she told me, that incarceration numbers are just as often a measure of our loss rather than our gains? I ask you, was it woke for a state attorney to believe, as did Governor Lawton Chiles, that by focusing greater resources on effective juvenile and youthful offender programs, we had our last best chance to divert adolescents and teenagers away from a life of crime? Was it woke for Andrew to place greater focus on career criminals, gun violence, and corporate crime than on petty offenses and the misdemeanors and bicycle violations cited in the governor's order? I'm amazed that we have a governor who had a team of lawyers who would go into federal court and argue that the state attorneys work for him, even though our Constitution makes it crystal clear that the state attorney works for the people within his or her circuit. If we allow this or any governor to run roughshod over our politics. Let me try that again. I practiced that for a week. If we allow any governor to run roughshod over the criminal justice system, we are inviting partisan politics and political bias into a system that should tolerate neither. Recently, the National District Attorneys Association reiterated that our democratic principles allowed for elected prosecutors to uphold justice in a manner that reflects the values and priorities of their constituents. If Andrew, or for that matter, Monique Worrell, the state's only African-American female state attorney, who was also recently removed by the governor, had performed their jobs in a manner inconsistent with the values of their community, that matter should have been decided in the ballot box, not by a governor seeking to score points with a right-wing base. By the way, before buckling under, our legislature might want to glance at the polling numbers that show that Governor DeSantis' problem is not that people do not like him. His problem is that he doesn't like people, and they know it. We should all be proud that Andrew Warren had the courage to risk his career by publicly speaking out in support of the reproductive rights of women and in opposition to any efforts to criminalize the acts of physicians and nurses who provide reproductive health services. This party should stand proud that Andrew Warren stood firm in announcing that in his circuit, in the circuit he had been elected to and in which he served, that hatred or violence aimed at transgender Floridians would not be tolerated. Democrats, Andrew, just like the great Democrats before him, realized that each time one more plank is removed from the cultural and political lock that dams up the flow of our freedoms, we're all more secure. Folks, Andrew Warren was not removed because of something he did or failed to do. He was removed because he had the courage to speak truth to power. I recently inquired of another state attorney what he thought about Andrew's removal. Well, he kind of was sheepish when he said, well, Andrew should have kept his beliefs to himself. To the contrary, we should all stand inspired by those rare leaders and individuals who are unafraid to set forth and stand by our democratic values. Folks, it's with great pride that I introduce to you Andrew Warren. He's a man who has proven he can't be bullied, he won't be quieted, the other side won't starve him out, and they can't run him off. In fact, Andrew Warren personifies what another Gainesville boy, Tom Petty, once said. He will stand his ground and he won't back down. Folks, let's welcome Andrew back to Gainesville.
Good evening, Democrats. It is great to be here. It's great to come home to Gainesville. As Rod said, I was born and raised in Gainesville. I'm a graduate of Brentwood Elementary, Littlewood Elementary, Fort Clark Middle School, Eastside High School. I grew up playing at Westside Park and the Boys Club and Citizens Field. And I think the last time I spoke in front of a group this large in Gainesville was my high school senior banquet. I'm having some flashbacks now. Someone earlier asked me if I wanted a beer. I said, we got to run outside and get one because my mom's here. Evelyn, thank you and your team for setting up this event, but I got to be honest, I have a huge complaint. You're making me speak after Rod and Monique. When I heard that Rod Smith was introducing me tonight, my first thought was, wait, he was suspended too? It's hard to describe how it feels to have someone that you grew up idolizing introduce you. But I do have to be honest, I was hoping for Spurrier. But Rod, you were number 2 on the list, and So I was asked to speak tonight about my suspension, about what's been going on with our legal challenge, and about what it means for democracy. And I am going to talk about all that, and I want to start by just giving you background about my suspension that a lot of people don't know, a piece that's been left out of the story. So I want to take you back to August 4th. What I thought would be an important day for me, a regular day for me as a prosecutor. I was sitting in my office in Washington, D.C., because I'm talking about August 4th, 2009, 14 years ago. I was working at the time as a prosecutor with the Justice Department. I had the privilege and honor of walking into courtrooms across this country and saying, Andrew Warren, on behalf of the United States. And at the time, I was preparing for trial in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a $56 million pump and dump stock conspiracy that ripped off investors and retirees and people who were just trying to get by on their savings. My wife was 8 months pregnant with our first child. She was driving to a doctor's appointment. Usually I would have taken her, but I had my co-counsel in town from Tulsa, and we were getting ready for trial, and so I felt like I needed to be at work that morning to get ready for the case. And I received a frantic phone call. My wife had been in a car accident, so of course I left the meeting and I rushed to the hospital. And I was able to make it through DC traffic in time to see the birth of my firstborn son. And spend and to spend 15 minutes with him before he was taken off life support. Bearing a child changes your life. I cannot begin to describe the mountain of emotion that I've gone through. But I can describe how that experience focused my attention on what truly matters in life. It strengthened my values, my love of family, my dedication to public service. My wife, for those of you who've had the opportunity to meet her, is my life's compass. She is my North Star. She is my anchor. But it's my son, and now my 2 daughters, who are my inspiration. They inspired me to run for state attorney. They inspire my vision for criminal justice. A vision that was about making our neighborhoods safer, so that no father, no mother would ever have to bury a son or comfort a daughter who'd been a victim of crime. It was about making our system better, more effective, and more just, so that victims received the justice that they deserved, and so that no one was treated differently based on the contents of their wallet or the color of their skin. It was about making our community stronger, making Hillsborough the best place to live and work and raise a family, to become a model for what a modern 21st century prosecutor's office looked like. And for 6 years as state attorney, I worked tirelessly and diligently to achieve that vision. Ever since the day that my community put their faith in me in that important position, and I am proud of the success that we had in Hillsborough County. I'm proud of the fact that we increased public safety and improved our system. I'm proud of the fact that I didn't sit in a courthouse just blindly prosecuting cases hoping that crime would go down, but instead we invested in safety through problem solving, through innovative solutions to actually make our neighborhood safer. I'm proud of the fact that we balanced punishment with accountability and prevention and rehabilitation. I'm proud of the fact that we built diversion programs and mental health treatment, that we address racial disparities, that we address mental health, that we disrupted the school-to-prison pipeline, that we stopped criminalizing poverty. I'm proud of the fact that we established a conviction review unit to look at wrongful convictions and to fix them so that we could go after the actual perpetrators. I am proud that in my 5 years as state attorney, crime went down 30% in Hillsborough County, making it the safest large county in Florida. And above all, I'm proud of the fact that I was elected by my community, that I'm accountable to my community, and that I represented the values of my community. And it was last year on August 4th, on what would have been my son's 13th birthday, the first time in 13 years that I had been in work on that day. I'd always taken time off on August 4th to be with my wife and my girls. But I was in the office that day because we had such an important case going on. We were indicting 2 men for the vicious, heinous rapes and murders of 2 young women from 39 years before. And we were only there that day because we had stumbled upon those cases, because we exonerated a man who had been wrongfully imprisoned for 37 years for one of those crimes. And when I say exonerated, I don't mean that he was innocent on some technicality. I mean the man never committed the crime, spent 37 years locked up on death row in prison in the state of Florida for a crime he did not commit. And the conviction review unit that we established worked with the Innocence Project of Florida, proved his innocence beyond any reasonable doubt, proved it so conclusively that not only the judge let him out, but the Florida legislature unanimously confirmed his innocence earlier this year. I wasn't with my wife where I'd always been on that day because I was sitting in the grand jury supervising the presentation of these 2 cold cases because I'd promised the victims' families that I would be there. I had made promises to the victims' families who had been waiting nearly 4 decades to finally have the accountability that they deserved. I'd promised the victim's family that I would be there to make sure that the indictments were presented and returned, and that I would be the first one to call them, to share the news that they and their loved ones had waited for 39 years to receive, that their loved ones' murderers had actually been charged with a crime. My friends, that's what I was doing on the morning that I was suspended from my job, allegedly for not doing my job. The universe sure has a cruel sense of irony sometimes. So what happened? I'm sitting in the grand jury. I received an email that said, "You've been suspended." I said, "What?" I walked upstairs. I went to my office. Within moments, 2 armed deputies appeared with a gentleman from the governor's office. They told me it was time to leave. They didn't even give me a copy of the executive order suspending me. They didn't let me gather my things. I knew better than to argue with law enforcement. When I was given an order, I obeyed. And I was escorted out of my own office by 2 armed sheriff's deputies. Now, one of the deputies who was there, I knew because he was the major who supervised the courthouse complex. He asked me if I wanted a ride home. I said, no, sir, I'm not going home. They took my car. They took my keys. I was driving a state car. I didn't go home. I walked across the street to the courthouse. And I get asked this question all the time. What was your first call? You call your lawyer, you call the press, you call your wife? No. I called the supervisor who was sitting in the grand jury because I was going to keep my promise. I don't care what the governor did. I don't care what colored crayon he signed my suspension with. I was going to make sure that the grand jury continued doing its work so that I could report back to those 2 families who had waited for 39 years the news that they deserved to hear that day. And I did. I called them. I met with them later that day. I did end up calling my wife, by the way. I called her. She was like my 4th call. I told her, I've been suspended. She said, what? I said, I got to run, sorry. So where are we? Well, we sued in federal court. You know, the trial is a search for the truth. It really wasn't that hard to find the truth in this case. I said it the day that I was suspended for political reasons. I was suspended as a political stunt. I was suspended because the governor needed some publicity. And we went to trial up in Tallahassee before a federal judge, and the federal judge made written findings of fact and law, and the judge made 3 key findings. 1, that I did my job, and that I'd done my job well, exactly in the way that I'd told voters I would. Number 2, that I had done nothing wrong, and the allegations against me in the executive order were false. And number 3, and this is the doozy, the governor of Florida had violated state and federal law in suspending me. Let me repeat that to make sure it truly sinks in. The governor of the 3rd largest state in the union suspended a twice duly elected official for politics and for publicity in violation of state and federal law. It gets worse. The New York Times ended up doing a big expose based on the discovery that's exchanged between the parties during litigation. And what the New York Times wrote about in detail was that this was a political hit job, a partisan publicity stunt with a predetermined outcome. It was a work of fiction. The governor and his staff ignored facts and lied to the public to fire up their MAGA base and maximize the media exposure. And in fact, the DeSantis' general counsel, this is a state employee who your tax dollars pay for. Not my tax dollars anymore, I haven't gotten paid in a while. General counsel of the governor's office admitted under oath that they knew some of the things that were written about me in the executive order were not true, but that they were included to maximize the publicity. Now, unfortunately, the judge said that despite his findings, he lacked the authority to reinstate me. He told me that I should go to the Florida Supreme Court. I did. They didn't do anything. Here I am. Now, the case is still on appeal, and we'll see what happens. Now, I wish I could tell you, too, that it had been an easy year. I wish I could tell you the last 13 months, have been okay. But unlike the governor, I don't lie. So I'll tell you, it's been difficult. It's been difficult professionally. I had the job that I worked very hard for, that I care about, ripped out from under me. It's been difficult politically. I mean, Hillsborough County is a purple county. I won barely in 2016. I won, as Rod said, overwhelmingly in 2020. And I won because I had support from Democrats and Republicans and independents because, my friends, public safety is not a partisan issue. Smart justice is not a partisan issue. Good policy that makes our neighborhood safer and our system better is not a partisan issue. The problem is the partisan tribalism of the day from the suspension has trumped, no pun intended, the good relationships that I built in the community. And to a lot of Republicans there, I'm just another Democrat who cares about silly things like democracy and freedom. Professionally, politically, personally, been a huge disruption. I've received death threats. But as State Attorney Worrell said, this is about so much more than us and our positions. This is not about me and my job. This is an attack, as we all know, on our freedoms, an attack on democracy, an attack on the rule of law. The governor has shown that he's willing to violate the rights of his own citizens. What, so he can finish fourth in the New Hampshire primary? He's attacked free speech. He muzzles ideas that he doesn't like. He punishes people that he disagrees with. He suspended me because I stood up to transgender discrimination, because I stood up for a woman's right to choose, because I stood up for privacy rights that exist in Florida's Constitution. He's attacked teachers and businesses. Now, the governor has even attacked the way we teach history. And he's attacking these rights because he said that, the way people exercise the rights makes some people uncomfortable. Well, I was taught two things at Eastside High. One is that Americans don't need permission slips to exercise their constitutional rights. And two, the Constitution isn't designed to make us comfortable. It's designed to make us free. The governor has attacked democracy. He overturned our elections. It's not the first time he's tried to Jim Crow our vote either. He gerrymandered the district up in Jacksonville. He's made it harder to register to vote, harder to mail in ballots. He's made it so you can't even bring water to a person waiting in the Florida heat to vote standing outside a polling place. He nullified Amendment 4 that the people of Florida pass, and not just the Democrats, all the people of Florida pass to restore the right to vote to returning citizens. The governor signed a law that basically completely nullified that constitutional amendment passed by the people. He created a police force, an election force, to go out, intimidate voters, arresting people who were told by his own administration that they had the right to vote in the state of Florida. He's attacking our bodies and our healthcare decisions. We had the 15-week abortion law. Now we have this draconian 6-week law. Let's keep in mind that doesn't just violate a woman's right to an abortion. It doesn't just violate a couple's right to privacy. It has a huge impact on maternal health care. It has an impact that disproportionately affects communities of color and low-income families. This is an attack on our women, on our sisters, our daughters. Look, I got 2 daughters. One is 12 going on 15, the other is 9 going on 6. And I am worried about the Florida that they are growing up in. But above all, this is an attack on the rule of law. State Attorney Worrell and I, when we were sworn in, put our hands on the Bible and swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of Florida and the Constitution of the United States. And I've given my everything to uphold that oath. I did it as a federal prosecutor, I did it as a state prosecutor. And the governor took that same oath. But yet, after the governor was told by a federal judge that he broke the law, that he had overturned democracy in Hillsborough County, what was the governor's response? He shrugged, he ignored, he didn't care. And I will tell you, a politician who is willing to break the law to get applause or to get a vote doesn't belong in the governor's mansion and certainly doesn't belong anywhere near the White House. So where does that leave us? This is a dangerous time. And it's a dangerous time to be of a minority opinion. It's a dangerous time to be a minority. It's a dangerous time to be a scientist. It's a dangerous time to be a teacher. It's a dangerous time to be a Democrat. Earlier tonight, someone said to me that the only way out of this mess is if, Lord Almighty walks through that door. And I said, my friend, if the good Lord stepped foot in Florida, the governor would probably suspend him too. So what do we do? Well, I don't know if you can see my tie with the Gators on it. When our beloved Gators are struggling, which they are, there's little we can do besides cheer louder. But democracy is not a spectator sport. Democracy requires participation. It isn't just some abstract concept. It is the heartbeat of our nation. And it relies on us to stand up and fight for the values that we believe in, for the values that we cherish, for the values that bind us together and have made America the beacon of hope and freedom throughout the world for 250 years. But these values are not guaranteed. They're as fragile as the parchment that they were once written on, and that's why we must be vigilant to protect them, to preserve them, and to pass them on to future generations. Look, I love my kids and my country far too much to just be a bystander as we witness the erosion of our national values. I love them too much to watch politicians who pay lip service to our rights and principles but then trample upon them. I love them too much to endure politicians who put party over country and self-promotion over public service. And I know you do too. So here's my ask. Don't spectate, participate. Vote, and make sure every single person you know votes. Stay engaged and encourage engagement from others, and most of all, never stop fighting for our values, for our freedom, for the rule of law. That is how we right the ship. That is how we take our democracy back. That is how we raise the banner of democracy for tomorrow and beyond. And my friends, there is no other choice. If we don't do it, the country, the state, the community that our children and grandchildren are growing up in is not going to be the one that we've dreamed about, is not going to be the one that we all recognize. That's why it's so important that we fight back. So, thank you, go Gators, and God bless.
Oh my God, I told you you all will have tears in your eyes. Thank you, Andrew. God bless you, and I think you're probably ready to run for governor. What do you think? I am serious. Are you ready? Not tonight, but possibly. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and I would like to acknowledge Andrew's parents who are here. Please stand, Mr. and Mrs. Warren. Where are you? Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're about to end this, and we always like to leave before 9, but I would like to acknowledge a lot of young people that are here tonight. We have a table of young Democrats, I think they are. UF College Democrats. And they are our future, and I think after hearing these two young people speak tonight, we've got to do something. And I think they're going to need some money after a while, right? Okay, we got you. Okay, come on up, Paul. If you bid on anything in the auction, please go by the table so you could take care of it tonight. This has been an awesome evening. We would like to thank everyone, all of you, for making this a wonderful, wonderful evening, except for the food, except for the chicken. But everything else was great, and Paul looks forward to working with you all in the future. We have to get out and vote. We can't stop. We have to put more efforts behind getting out to vote. That's the only thing that's going to save us. Our chair, and we'll close after. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. I just wanted to say a couple words.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here this evening.
And thank you to all of our table sponsors. Thank you to all of our platinum, sapphire, bronze associates and friends of the gala sponsors. And I don't know, I feel at a loss for words after hearing both Monique and Andrew speak. And we have things that we need to do moving into the future, especially, as Evelyn said, getting out the vote.
Yes. Okay, if nothing else, we thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening and go by and pick up your items from the silent auction. Thank you.